Yeah, buddy.
That is the way you hit it after a Victory Monday. I don't know, man, but that was a yeah, buddy, for the ages right there. Hey, man, it doesn't hurt that bad, does it? It was 34-31, and the team was putting it all out there, I thought. What were you feeling about that game, Eric?
Well, first, let me apologize for being somewhat less prepared than normal. It is deer camp, and I have a date with a tree just as soon as we can wrap this up. I
Yeah.
haven't had a lot of time to do much, but as far as your question goes, we hung 28 points on the number one defense in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
I think that yes, of course, this is disappointing. It's not Tampa Bay disappointing,
Mm-hmm.
but it's disappointing nonetheless. I think we were, particularly in the second half, thoroughly outcoached. I think, unfortunately, there's a blueprint a little bit about how to deal, at least from a special teams level, with Green Bay. Now, um, a pretty darn exciting game. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll tell you, the vibe down here was very energetic for the first half. The drinks were flowing. I was feeling a whole lot of pace. I was feeling the running game was kind of getting going. And I was wondering how many snaps Alan Lazard was going to get. But at the end of the first half, again, 28-14. And then the second half comes around, Eric, and the third quarter just changed the game. You know, we had 4 turnovers in the first half total between the Colts and the Packers. And the first notes that I had was, how are we going to respond, right? Always the question. How are we going to respond to these interceptions? And well, we responded pretty well. The third quarter, though, was a completely different story. What are your thoughts on that third quarter?
The third quarter was, uh, reaching into the history vault. I'm not sure that the Green Bay Packers have had a worse, less productive quarter of football ever.
Yeah.
Who won the second half adjustments by the coaching staffs? Pretty clear.
Yeah.
Pretty clear.
Yeah.
Quick play calls. I think it's also fair because on this podcast, we have really tooted Matt LaFleur's horn on ingenuity, on play calling. Felt like this was maybe at least the second half was maybe one of the poorer jobs that he's done. Ultimately, offense, defense, and special teams he signs off on, and it is ultimately his responsibility.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it certainly is. We missed out big time on the drives that we had because Indianapolis Colts, they get the ball third quarter, and they had possession from minute 15 all the way down to the 7:43 mark. And then we went 3 and out, and we're punting 6 minutes into the third quarter with 6 minutes left. They hold the ball all the way down to a minute and 59. I mean, the Colts had our defense on the field, exhausted. The snap counts were a little varying based on the first half. Everybody was tweeting how fantastic Rashawn Gary was. Second half, didn't see him in as many snaps. Again, I don't know what the question is with that when we have 84 snaps on defense and he's getting 35 snaps, somewhere around there.
And by the way, that's a very significant point because Preston Smith maybe had his poorest game as a Packer.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there were multiple times when put Gary in, put Gary in. He wasn't setting edges. Mm-hmm. I don't know the busted coverage on the long pass to, I think, the
Pittman.
Tight end. No, to the tight end where Preston Smith is carrying him.
He's
down
on
to
Doyle.
Yeah. Down to the 5-yard. Preston Smith covering Burton down to the 5-yard. That was ridiculous to me.
Yeah. Burton.
I'm at a loss, and I apologize, folks. I haven't had a chance to rewatch this week, and
apologies are not necessary. It just You're here for your takes and your insight, and you have too much history on the Packers to not give a damn good opinion on here. But moving on to the fourth quarter, again, the Colts had it for the first 5 minutes. I'm sorry, first 6 minutes. They just controlled the ball, and what they did was put points on the board. And again, it's that offense. We did not get the big play to get us going in the third quarter like we had in the first half. MVS with the pass interference, MVS with the great reception. A lot of things to be said about that.
Yeah, we don't get to the point where we're in overtime without MVS. He first fumble in 40 games played,
42 games, yeah.
or 42 games. Yeah, tough break for the kid. He wasn't carrying the ball in a real technically
Secure.
sound,
Yeah.
sound fashion. I was trying to be polite.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I made a rant video this morning because I was so upset, and I don't want to put it on the podcast because it was certainly explicit. But I've just clearly, and most of the good people on Packers Twitter have had enough of just the idiots out there who put the death threats out there, who have number one, who can have the audacity to make a death threat to a professional athlete because you failed on your fantasy game, or you missed on the fumble.
About?
Oh, it's just
what are we talking about? Death threats?
Oh yeah, he's got he's got over 60,000 likes on his tweet he's put out from last night. It's a shame that Packer Nation can take a look at the last play, which is fresh in your mind, where the game could be, the game was decided essentially, but we ignore the other 3 turnovers, and we don't look at anything from a perspective of a human. We just sit behind the typewriter. The keyboard is right there, and these chumps who've never played a damn sport in your life. I mean, I'm an all-conference punter. Look what kind of chump I am. At least I've been there. You understand? At least I was in a team sport and busted your balls out there. Now you're talking about a 25-year-old kid who's in the NFL. He's less than. I don't even know how old he is. He's under 25. And the way people treat it, it's a little disgusting. So you want the expletive thing? Go check out the YouTube page. I don't know how long I'm going to have that one up before I cool down.
I'm just going to tell you, out of respect for you as a friend and as a Packer fan, that's the one time when you can reference punting when I won't mention my standard. I'm just going to say. Say that.
It's the.
Well, that's ridiculous.
The strength people have behind a keyboard, yeah.
Well, or lack thereof. The idea, and that just takes me back. The idea that you're actually threatening somebody based on a play in a football game.
Yeah. Listen,
that's sick.
I felt better about the loss in this game than I felt when we got out of the Jacksonville game. The Jacksonville game felt like we didn't perform at all really well. Yeah. This game felt like we performed well. Felt like, when you go 3 and out and then you miss your fourth down conversion attempt in the third quarter and you're still within the game. I mean, we were putting up points relatively consistently. It seemed like when we weren't turning the ball over, of course, but we had a good flow on offense, I thought. And
our run game seems to have abandoned us a bit the last couple of weeks. Lack of carries to Aaron Jones. I think if you take the 115-yard run that Aaron Jones had away, he averaged less than 3 yards a carry on the rest of his catches, or on the rest of his runs. Really nothing from Jamal Williams. We sort of
couple first downs,
abandoned the run game, and I'm curious with a lead why that was. There was a number of really questionable play calls on the short yardage ones. On the fourth down, there was no. It certainly wasn't Jamal Williams' fault, but that play was so easily diagnosed and covered. There's no second option
Yeah.
on fourth down.
Mm-hmm.
Something I heard too, last week or 2 weeks ago, Aaron Rodgers was uh, playing and having some fun with David Bakhtiari over Bakhtiari referencing Rodgers' inability to quarterback sneak. And that was kind of a fun thing a couple weeks ago. Last night I look, when a team isn't going to cover up the center and you need a yard,
Mm-hmm.
goodness gracious, you got an athletic quarterback. I was, we can second guess if the play works, then it looks genius, and if it doesn't, then it looks stupid. And you gotta step back and evaluate. But it just seemed like there were a ton of questionable offensive calls, and maybe even more so on the defensive side of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote down at one point we had late in the fourth quarter on third and 20, we had 7 guys more than 12 yards off the ball. You can't give. Yeah. And something else I wanted to ask you, because I can go back and forth about this. The ridiculous, well, I don't know if I'd call it ridiculous officiating, but the offensive line, the holding calls
Mm-hmm.
on the Colts at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Would it have been smarter to put them at 1st and 30 and come after them than 2nd and 20? Not a game-changing thing. I was just curious because, it's a chess match.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the way the timeouts were left on the game and they wanted to get the ball as soon as they could with as much time left on the clock, I understood why they did it. I just couldn't believe they continued to get penalty calls.
It was pretty amazing.
We talked about their offensive line. Hey, listen, their offensive line did a good job.
Absolutely.
They gave up 1 sack with Phillip Rivers, 1 sack. But I thought, again, damn, when Rashawn Gary's in the game, it's not a straight lane. That pocket gets real tight. And when Zadarius, it's a good pass rush. We're just not cracking that nut yet. Again, people might point to, me being a complete idiot and a high school punter. I get it. But I don't know at what point Preston Smith comes into our equation or our conversation of what he was in the equation last year, right? He was a vital part. And now it's like, yeah, Gary's doing great, but we don't have that consistency on the other side, Kenny Clark is really doing some good things. Lancaster was moving the pocket, but we just didn't get through and get that out. And again, credit to Phillip Rivers. He slings it out quick, that.
Well, first of all, let me just say, you're not an idiot. You're an OG Packer fan. You have relevant points, and you bring them to the podcast. And on top of that, you're in the top 2 punters that I personally know from Lakeland High School. And I want you to and this is another time when I'm not going to mention Mike Henrik.
Hey, Mike, you're welcome. We're making you famous, buddy. So another thing, really to piggyback on our offensive and defensive lines, what we saw happen yesterday, we had talked about, last year on our phone calls, pre-podcast, during the podcast, of what Jenkins does, what his talent level is, and to jump in at center. And I believe his snaps were quite a few at center.
Let me interrupt you there. On that fumbled snap, I watched it, and they showed it so many times. Hard to figure out, for me at least, what Lindsley did wrong. It seemed like the ball was and Rodgers didn't, he didn't back out of there like usually happens with those exchanges. It just seemed like a very, very odd one to try to diagnose whose responsibility that was, because they both looked like they did what they were supposed to.
Yeah.
Just, I suppose, it's one of those fluke things that just happens every so often.
That's exactly what I chalked it up to. It's one of those things that never happens with us. Chance is going to have it that it's going to happen at one point. It happens in the middle of a damn good game. But Lindsley goes out. Jenkins moves from guard to center. and our boy Runyon moves into left guard. With Bakhtiari re-signed, we had the conversations of what happens if Bakhtiari goes. Well, he's not going anywhere. Now we're looking at the line of the future right now. When you have Bakhtiari, Runyon, Jenkins, Patrick, Lane Taylor, however that falls out, and Billy Turner. Wow, that's a really strong line right there.
Got to give a little plug for our boy Yash Nyman at that point because, who knows? He may be the right tackle of the future. He's a mountain.
Well,
yes, no, the O-line played very, very well last night. I didn't, the running game didn't work very well, but
Yeah.
the O-line did a great job. I think Houston got the one sack on Rodgers. Yeah, and you could almost say that was holding the ball too long.
Oh, it
And
was.
and Billy Turner pushed him, and I guess I was listening a little bit, and apparently Bulaga and Bakhtiari for years have talked about how carrying the guy to where they don't think Rodgers is, and then Rodgers just happens to step into there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think overall, you gotta give it up to John Runyon to step in, to keep stepping in. Third time this year, stepping
Rookie.
in. Yep, as a rookie, stepping in and playing solid ball. I mean, he wasn't a turnstile. He did a decent job, and it's great on the job training for a future starter.
Yeah, yeah. It's going to be great having the conversation in the future with Mr. Franza when we talk about Runyon a little more, if he keeps playing and continues to play. But we'll see this week what happens with Lindsley. I'm not sure how long he's going to be out or if he's going to be out. He was walking pretty darn gingerly back to the locker room.
It did not look like a comfortable gait.
Yeah, no. All right, and another thing that stood out in the game was not just Robert Tonyan's touchdown. Jay Sternberger was really involved in the game. And in the first half, it seemed like, yeah, that's a great tandem to have. And at what point does Mercedes get cycled out and we get another blocking tight end in there? Those two have, I think, a heck of a tandem written all over them in the future.
I agree, but I also think that great job by Mercedes Lewis last night as well. I don't see a reason to not keep the three of them together, for at least a little while longer.
Oh,
the old guy still play.
Yeah. No argument for me. No argument for me. I just see Tanyan and Sternberger. They could be on our team for the next 6-8 years,
Agreed. How did you feel about, again, and I have not had a chance to go back and watch. We know about we talked about the first touchdown to Tanyan, but the miss to win the game at the end, a wide open Tanyan. That one hurt. That one hurt.
Yep.
The 4th and 1. I was all for it. I admit that kicking a field goal there isn't playing aggressively. I'm tired of us backpedaling. I have no problem going down shooting. And at 4th and 1, if you can't get a yard and you're an elite team, perhaps you don't deserve it. And that's kind of the way I felt at the end. We did get back, and we did have the hurry up, which is nice to go down the length of the field and at least get to the overtime period, which leads me to the other part of that, and that is the spiking the ball. I don't understand why you don't have a second play called, that you can do a quick out, get out of bounds, stop the clock, and incompletion stops the clock. But to not have that extra play inside the 15-yard line really hurt last night. At least you take a shot to the back of the end zone. If it's not there, you haven't wasted that much time, and you have an extra down. That was disappointing.
Whether that's 0.5%, it's 0.5% more than spiking the ball,
Right.
So one other thing on the offensive side of the ball that we could not go without mentioning, especially how everybody was bagging on MVS. Our receivers are the best blocking receivers that I've ever seen on a team. Our guys are so big, they're so physical, and man, we've never show me the data, show me the players, show me on other teams where they got receivers And we saw EQ in there as well. I mean, we're lucky right now, and the naysayers on the draft are failing to realize what we have right now with veterans that are in the system and that are playing for one another, that they got a purpose, and they are of one mind when it comes to blocking, and it's impressive as hell.
Yeah, it was interesting. You saw EQ early, and then just sort of lost favor to Alan Lazard the rest of the way. But you're absolutely right. Devontae Adams can block, and then you got the big guy in Lazard. There isn't anybody that blocks better than him.
Mm-hmm.
St. Brown blocks, Malik Taylor blocks, MVS blocks. They all are, and that's
MVS had a
that's
great day blocking.
yep. This is a valuable commodity that's worth rolling with. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that we don't add to this group,
Yeah.
but we also really haven't seen all that much from UQ or from Malik Taylor to know what we really have there.
Well, I'd like to see a little bit more from EQ and Taylor potentially on the kickoff team, because Darius Shepard is not our answer to return those kicks, Eric.
Right. And as we said, you know, LaFleur signs off on offense, defense, and special teams. Um, Sean Meninga, the special teams coach, how could you keep trotting him out there? That's just simply being out coached. And it was that simple, easy, indoor, high kick to the 5 yard line, high
Mm.
kick towards the goal line, force him to return it. And maybe if Irvin's back there, that's a strategy that can backfire on them in a
Mm-hmm.
hurry. But certainly not with Darius Shepard. He got sent down to the practice squad last year for the fumble on special teams.
Yep.
He fumbled again, and he's still going back there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking to myself, we don't have anybody on the team that could do better. Obvious candidates. You think from the past, D back,
Six foot
somebody like
two, Malik
or
Taylor. I don't
Jair
know.
or Jair. I'm thinking Jair.
Yeah.
However, just coming back from a concussion,
Yeah.
you sure don't
Well,
want to expose him to
the
special
shooting
teams
range.
hits. But there's a lot of guys. There's a lot of guys
Mm.
that couldn't be worse.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm good with Darius. I think he's probably a great guy, a great kid, but it's time for somebody else to get an opportunity. I don't know. I'd love to see Malik Taylor. I'd love to see what he can do returning a kick. 6'2", the kid
Absolutely.
flies. Play like your games, your career's on the line, and I don't see that from Darius. He was.
Yeah, or just dipping back into the traditional defensive backfield pool. What about a guy like Kadar Holman, who's got good hands and 4.3 speed?
Yeah.
Somebody.
Let me just get ahead of next year's conversation when we're talking about KB and Ento returning those kicks. Hey, defensively, the secondary. I got to stop saying backfield because the soccer coaching has me thinking backfield when I'm meaning secondary, and people have called me out on it. I'm a little bit of a
defensive backfield.
Yeah,
is correct.
But listen, Darnell Savage, we bagged on him. I mean, we gave him the hot iron right on the chest. He's really turning out the last couple of weeks, which is great to see. Adrian Amos, I thought, played a damn good game. Biggest question I had was how the linebackers were going to play. Christian Kirksey, Kamal Martin. What did you think of those two guys?
Well, I think Kirksey's not the sideline to sideline guy that he used to be. Having him on a wide receiver was foolish. We didn't get to see him enough of Kamal Martin. Particularly when Jonathan Taylor, they switched gears in the second half, and Jonathan Taylor's eating us up. Why we're not going more to a base at that point? Let them, it's like we have no confidence in our cornerbacks, and we had our two big guys back yesterday. No confidence in them manning up. It's all, or going more towards the Fritz Shermer style, where you can take two guys and take them out. And then you can play more of a base defense that can combat the run. Love Raven Green. Love seeing him. Love seeing him near the line of scrimmage. He had great fumble, caused fumble yesterday, but not a run stopper, and not. I guess what I'm saying is I would have, once it was evident how badly they were going to kill us with the run, I would have liked to have seen maybe Barnes, Martin, and Kirksey on the field at the same time, at least to stop the bleeding.
Yeah, well, Barnes is out with COVID, so we can't do anything there. But again, defensive wise, the tackling is the issue. When they get 71 yards after first contact and they end up with 100 and whatever, 140 yards rushing, that's the difference right there. We're not tackling again. We're back to the same old, same old. Yeah, again, I don't think it's all on Pettin. I think that linebackers, secondary, you got to tackle. You just have to tackle. And we have questions, and we're going to continue to have questions because I don't see any kind of firing happening to a team that's ending up, 11-5, 12-4.
There's only once that's worked out,
Mm-hmm.
and that was when Baltimore fired their offensive coordinator. Flacco came to life,
Yeah,
but this is pretty late in the season now
yeah.
for
We just we got to eat. We got to eat what's being served to us, and we just got to improve on what we can improve on. And tackling's where it all starts. We could talk about how far they're playing off. That's going to drive us crazy. But hey, again, we're not the ones calling the scheme, so who knows?
when your goal though is to design a defense that requires 10, 12 play long drives, not giving up the home run. Don't you wear out your own defense as well?
Mm-hmm.
Keeping them on the field like that just
Yeah, you
doesn't
sure do.
seem smart to me. It just doesn't. Bend but don't break is not something I've ever been fond of.
Well, the third quarter proved that we really took a beating, and having them out for that whole quarter affected us in the fourth quarter, and it is what it is. At the end of the day, I still woke up this morning pissed off at the people about MVS and how they're treating a fellow fam member, but not feeling as bad about the loss. I mean, this is it's not an NFC loss. Number one, it's not the Bears or the Vikings or the Lions. Hey, man, we're gonna move on. They're a good team. You know,
Yep.
they're gonna go. They're gonna be in the playoffs. So let's leave it at that. Well, before we head out, Eric, you got any final thoughts?
Well, again, this doesn't feel like we mentioned earlier. This isn't a daubered down worst game ever. We played a bad second half and maybe missed some opportunities to win at the end. Um, but again, it doesn't feel like Tampa Bay. It doesn't feel. It doesn't feel like something that we can't clean up. I
Mm-hmm.
do think we have to, as has been the case all the way for most of the way through Dom Capers and Pettin's entire stay, we've got to get something figured out on run D. That is the Achilles heel. And if you can, we've got this great secondary. Um, but when you can't force a team to pass, it limits what you can do to create opportunities for your defensive backfield.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, buddy.
I got your back, bro.
Well, I'm proud of the way that in the post game conferences, both Aaron and Matt stood up for MVS. I love that they said they've had the best week of practice going into this game for the season. So just getting into the mindset of when's the right time to peak. We have all kinds of potential. We got a hell of a deck of cards. We got to shuffle them all correctly, get them lined up. That's really all I feel. But I'm just really proud of the way Aaron Rodgers and LaFleur stood behind their receiver that everybody's bagging on. And I can't imagine what kind of confidence that gives a young kid after that kind of fumble at that time in the game for people to have your back, man. It makes me proud.
Yeah, a lot of his tail off and lack of play at the end of last year was both attributed to a lack of confidence, but also an injury. So I hope we don't get to that point without MVS's catch
Yeah.
from the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. I'm going to ask you to do something to put up on our Twitter. Um, Speaking of wonderful, sort of cool moments, the Robert Tanyan Matt LaFleur sideline exchange was for the ages. Just absolutely love it. I have a feeling that maybe LaFleur needed some ice after that
Oh
game.
man, Tunyon went full Ric Flair on him on the sideline. Man, it was awesome. I was ready for the chair to come out, and bust him over the back. Oh,
Yeah.
so awesome. Yeah, man, that's what I mean. The vibe of that team, it's infectious. I love them. I
Yeah.
love them.
Well, and you know what? We still control our own destiny in the AFC.
Yep.
Excuse me, in the NFC.
Yep.
We're still right there. We're still a viable candidate for a week off. We're still in the driver's seat by a long shot for the
Mm-hmm.
division. We're going to be just fine. We just need to learn from this, and get better, and that's what great teams do, and hopefully that's what we do.
Yeah. Well, 7-3. Not disappointed. Well, listen, guys. Wednesday we have Peter Jones coming back on the show, and our Packer profile is going to be on tight end Paul Kaufman. He played for the Packers from 78 to 85, and he was the tight end of my youth.
Yeah, buddy.
Pretty
Love me some Kaufman.
Pretty fired up about that one. Well, everybody, thank you for listening to us on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, anywhere that you get podcasts. You're getting the Acme Army. Appreciate you guys taking the time to hit that share button and pass it along to a friend or a fellow Packer fan who is interested in fun podcasts. Your time, biggest thing you can give us, and we appreciate every single second. With that, Eric, take us out.
Well, I just want to wish everyone a great Thanksgiving week. We'll see you on Wednesday. Got to give a little shout out to my nephew Hans, who's the only one that has something hanging from the buck pole. So got to give props to the youngster. Have a great week, and go Pack, go.